As Carrie said, for those of you who don't know, I'm the Arthur and this is the Chantale. I've been in the community for 30 years and you've been here for?
39.
39 years. We have a lot of experience. Hopefully some of that's been translated into knowledge and we'd love to share it with you. Can I just say, it is so fantastic when you get up and follow someone like Robbie. You just feel ready to deliver, you know. Robbie did a great job. And I will echo his words. So it is a privilege and an honour. I'm not good at preparing for these things, but I am good at feeling these things. And I feel the honour and the privilege it is to speak, to share about anything associated with this life, but in particular this thing that we call belong. Last week we started with history, and now for the next series of 101 sessions, we're going to be talking about our pathway. And I think that piece of paper, actually, it's probably down the back. Sorry, it's right here. No, sorry, that was on me. And you'll have a copy of that in a moment. And on that is this picture, our pathway, and also our values. And so what Chantale and I have been asked to unpack after Robbie did worship, which we said was at our heart, we've been asked to unpack this three-person thing, this belong. Okay? And so that's what we're going to do. Rather than tell you about what it is to belong, I'm going to tell a very brief story and get you to share a story. I want to tell you about the first time I felt like I belonged at Emmanuel. And it was the very first time I came to what they called the gathering. The gathering was a prayer meeting, and they used to do it every week. And I walked into this prayer meeting with the person who knew me, and he introduced me to this woman called Annie Yen. Now, Annie was a student from, I think, Singapore, who was out studying, and she was in the community for about 2 years, I think. But she welcomed me with such openness. She hugged me. I'm 6'3", she would have been 4'3". And I just experienced a sense of belonging. And it impacted me so much that to this day, I remember the moment, I remember her name. She never became a friend or really an associate in any extent. But it was a powerful moment for me. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to just take 2 minutes, okay, in groups of 3 or 4, to see if you can recall a moment of belonging. Now, it doesn't have to be the first time that you were here. It may have been after 6 months. It may have been after you'd been playing on the drums at Emmanuel worship for a number of things and somebody came and said, you're great, you know, etc. But I just want you to take a moment to share. Do you have a moment of belonging? And if you don't, say, I don't know that I have. All right? This isn't about the best story, okay? This is just tapping into and identifying with what it is to belong. So, off you go. 2 or 3 minutes.
Those stories become more and more important as your journey continues. So continue to tell those stories. I clearly remember mine. I was about 16 and Brian Cole, I was this quiet little mouse in youth group, and Brian Cole came over to me and he just spoke into my life and he said, I see you. And that impacted me. To this day, I remember what he said to me and the way that called me out. So from the very start of our community, we have recognised the importance of our relationships. It's been deeply, deeply woven into our call, into being called into being, and into who we are as a people and our charism to actually be and proclaim God with us to the world. Without our relationships, it kind of falls down. You know, our relationships are in many ways where the rubber hits. in making that a reality. So, and just a couple of examples of that from the very early days. So there was a prophetic word very early on where we were being called to be knitted together, that our hearts would be knitted together. There was, you heard Shane talking about the clustering, and along with that sense of physical clustering was a real call for the clustering of hearts. So, you know, what we did with our homes and our lives was one thing, but that our hearts would be clustered together was a very other thing altogether. And at the very first version of our commitment, if you ever get the chance to read it, it is largely about our relationships. It's largely about relationships. And as we have grown as a community, we've really understood more about our place in the church and our mission, and our subsequent covenants and commitments have reflected that. But that first one was really about our relationships and the call to be a community. So you remember Pat talked about the current of grace, and that's a relatively new term, but that current of grace was there right from the start of the renewal, the start of the church, and the start of our community. So if we think about this question of belonging and our relationships, really the question for us is, how are we called to allow this current of grace to flow in and through our relationships as members of Emmanuel? What would that look like? What does that look like? I'm going to let that question just hang in the air for about 10 seconds. What does that look like, that current of grace in our relationships?
You know, we like the church we're a part of, and like any organisation, we seek to we have a vision and mission, but then we seek to scaffold it. We seek to put structures around it which help to facilitate things that maybe wouldn't happen in the natural unless we created a structure. And there's been a couple of structures that have always existed in the community, pretty much from the start. Particularly, the first one is small groups. Small groups have existed in the community. Really, the community almost was born out of what you could almost call a small group. So small groups have existed in many forms, and they've been married small groups, single small groups, mixed small groups, young people small groups, old people small groups, multi-generational small groups. I don't like them, so let's meet with them small groups. No. But there have been a multitude of small groups, okay? And we still have small groups. And it's a structure. It's an instruction. It's a structure which meant to help facilitate an encounter with each other, an opportunity to meet. You know, Chantale used a phrase there. She remembers when a man called Brian Cole came to her and said, "I see you." And in our deepest parts of our being, we want to be seen. Like, I know the cry of my heart, when I really strip back and am vulnerable, is that I want you to know me for who I am, all of me. Not just good Arthur with a microphone, not just Arthur whatever, put in your own label, musician, ping pong player. Oh. I could be. I could learn to clap on beat. But you know what I mean. Like, I want you to know me and accept me for who I am. Small groups is a place historically where that has been meant to be facilitated. Mentoring is another one. Mentoring, you would have heard that. If you stay around the community long enough, you'll hear terms like headship, PCP. That wasn't a drug. That was a pastoral caring person. It was. That was the term. Mentoring. Now, one of the points I'd like to make is you can see an evolution there. Like headship, pastoral caring person, mentoring. as we have grown as a people, our understanding of these things has grown also. And so we've sought to identify and to name them more directly and accurately. And they'll change again. Like, one thing, this isn't in my notes, but you better be, if you come and join this people, you better be ready for change. Because it's always changing. As Robbie said, so God is ever changing. And we live on the edge of that change. What I want to say about those things is that don't get hung up on structures. There's lots of structures in our community, some of them to facilitate relationships and that. It's the heart of who you are. It's the heart of who I am in the context of those structures. So when we talk about small groups, what's important is who we are and how far we're willing to go. Again, as Robbie he spoke about the extent to which I'll go with worship, the extent to which we will go in our relationships, the extent to which we risk is the extent to which we will grow collectively as a body.
And that God can work in and through us. Okay, so let's, I'm just going to step back so I don't feedback. Let's have a look at this first value that we're talking about. So this pathway of belong relates to a couple of our core values. And the first one we want to talk about is caring relationships. And it's here, and what I've done is just bolded a couple of words. And I'm just going to unpack some of those words and put a little bit of flesh around them. So we are a community of believers who welcome everyone into our midst with warmth and acceptance, with lives of authentic faith that are grounded in caring, real and life-giving relationships. So the first one that I bolded there is community of believers. Like, if we're believers, we're actually followers of Jesus. We've encountered Jesus' love. And why do we love? Because he loved us first. We have experienced his love. And so if we are followers, if we are believers in Jesus, then we are called to love God and to love our neighbour. That's what we're all called to, no matter if you're Joe Blow Christian, going down the street. There's something else, though, for us. He's called us as a people. So we're a community of people, believers, who have been loved by God, who are called to love another, and we've been called together. And so there's a way in which we're called to love each other that takes another step and that goes a little bit deeper. The truth is that others will know that God is with all of us because our relationships will reflect the evidence of that love that we have received from Jesus and that we pour out of ourselves to each other. The next part that I've bolded is warmth and acceptance. We welcome with warmth and acceptance. Why do we do that? Because every person is created in the image and likeness of God. And we see Jesus, we see the image of God in each other. That's enough. That's why we welcome people. That's why we welcome each other into our homes, because we welcome Jesus into our homes every time we welcome each other into our homes. I'm going off the grid for a second. There was the Cole family. I mentioned Brian before. They did this skit at a concert, at a community concert once, and it was, who's coming to Jesus? Who's coming to dinner? And they get a phone call, and it's Jesus on the phone. He says, I'm coming to dinner, I'm coming to dinner. 3 people come to the door, and they're like, sorry, we can't serve you right now because Jesus is coming to dinner. Finally, Jesus rings and says, what happened? And they're like, where are you? And Jesus is like, I've been 3 times, but you turned me away. We welcome each other with warmth and acceptance, but not just each other, because that grows a culture of welcome so that we can welcome others. And that's always our heartful mission, is to create welcome so that we can welcome others. We live lives of authentic faith that are grounded in caring, real, and life-giving relationships. Do you know that, and I didn't know this until yesterday, but the word care comes from a Germanic word, which I can't remember, but it means to grieve with. To grieve with. Caring means that I am my brother's keeper, that you are my concern, and what happens to you matters to me. That's what caring relationships looks like. You know, I think back to the book of Ruth. When you laugh, I will laugh. When you weep, I will weep. Your people will be my people. That's what caring relationships is like. We carry each other's burdens, and I let you know what my burdens are so that you can carry them with me. When I think of relationships like this, I think of a beautiful situation where our founder, Brian Smith, he passed away, and for many years his wife Lorraine was on her own. Every week Lisa Humphreys would go and visit her and take her shopping to do her groceries. Every week, right until the very end when Lorraine passed away last year. That's a caring relationship. Something truly beautiful. We're called to be real. Arthur and I had a big discussion about what real really means. And it crystallised for me in the term to be really who we are. To be honest and vulnerable and ready to have difficult conversations. To seek understanding, to be ready to forgive and to reconcile. I recently saw an awesome example of this. We were sitting around with a very small group of people, and there was a discussion happening, and someone asked a question, and another person, a brother who loved this sister very much, said, "Can I be honest?" And she said, "Yes, you can." So an invitation was made, and it was welcomed, and words were spoken in love and received in love, and since that time there have been real things changing. It was truly beautiful. I was so impacted by the way that it happened. I've got to be honest, in the last month, I have had one person come to me and said, "You hurt me." And I did. And we were able to talk about that in love. I've had another person say, "I'm sorry, will you forgive me?" And that was a joy to be able to do that. Arthur and I used to talk about, we had difficult situations or difficult topics. We would talk about, we're going to go there. We're going to go to that place of vulnerability where you're going to see weakness, you're going to see my rawness, you're going to see, who I am in my woundedness. And we're going to go there. And that's one of the things that we commit to do in order to have these real relationships. We have to say, "I'm ready to go there," actually. Thanks, Gary. I'm ready to go there. I'm ready to go to that place where it's vulnerable, because I also know that that's where that current of grace is alive and is there. I know that that's where that current of grace is ready to break through. It's in my relationships and into what we do together, our mission and our vision, and to make that a reality in our lives. It also means that to have real relationships, we have to guard our speech, we have to guard our thoughts, we have to think the best, and we have to be ready to have those conversations in love. The last one is we have life-giving relationships. I love this one. It is that we encourage one another, we empower one another, we nurture one another. There is no tall poppy syndrome here, because we're about the growth of each other. I'm in your corner and I've got your back. there's someone in my life outside of my husband who does that for me on a really regular basis, and I didn't realise it for a very long time. But one day I got this email from Luke Plant saying, "Hey, just a reminder, have you done blah, 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 blah?" And it made me realise that guy has my back constantly in my ministry, in all that I do to serve. Luke has my back, and he's always encouraging me and empowering me to move forward in whatever way that God is calling me to do.
Thanks, Hannah. The next value that we want to talk about very briefly is embracing all generations. And I did highlight them, but I'm not going to talk to those things. So we welcome people of every age and stage in life to find their home and thrive among us. I'm going to tell a very brief story of embracing all generations, or how we embrace generations. When I first came to the community, I lived in a house with guys, and none of us had a car. And so to get to the weekly gathering, we needed a lift. And so I used to get a lift with a guy. The office rang me and said, "There's a man," and you don't think about it when you're a young person. That means someone somewhere said, "There's this guy Arthur, he's just joined, he lives in this house and he needs a lift. How do we find a lift?" Anyway, they said, "This guy, Terry Finn and his wife Mary, they're going to give you a lift." Okay, so you walk down to the corner of Logan Road and Marshall Lane, I think it is, and you'll jump in the car and pull up, and I would literally jump in the back of the car, and he didn't let me sit in the front, and I'm really tall, but anyway, and we'd go to the gathering, okay, and we did this for months, and I didn't know who Terry was. I didn't know that he was one of the senior leaders of the community. I didn't know who Mary was, but they welcomed me, and we did this lift thing, and then over time I got to see Terry preach and teach, and if you've ever had the privilege, he's just a beautiful teacher. But anyway, so I had a relationship with Terry from that time, And then when Lachlan was about 10 years old, when my son was about 10 or 11, we got invited to a father and son camping trip on a place called Northwest Island. And it was all men and their sons and their grandsons. So Terry came with his son and his grandson, and we all went to this island, and it was an awesome week. There wasn't one shower. It was excellent. Lachlan and I were so proud. We wore the same shorts for 7 days straight. Anyway, we had this great time. But in that time, Lachlan connected with Terry. And he really had an impact on him. So that fast forward 10 years, and it's Lachlan's 21st. And it's the age of Facebook, okay? So you don't send invitations to anything. You just put things... But we said, no, there's probably some people that we should actually contact deliberately to let them know. And one of the people that my son wanted was Terry Finn. Where does that happen? Outside of family in the world. And in family, let's be honest. That's the power of multi-generational. And it goes back the other way. How many of you have held a child that's not your own? And experienced something, experienced connection and love. It's incredibly powerful, and it's why it's articulated in one of our values. We do a lot in youth ministry. We do a lot in it. We're growing our thing for young couples, etc. But we are multi-generational. And you are the first generation that has this level of multi-generationality. Like, the community has grown up. There's been people now who've been here for 40 years, and they've got older. And it's a blessed time to be a part, and may it all be multi-generational. What we're going to do, just to close, I'm going to get you to think. Again, you're going to do a little buzzing. Think of somebody who you've met who's had an impact on you, but it's someone not of your generation. And just share with your small group of how they've impacted on you.